Good morning, lovely friends. It's a very chilly morning here in the greenhouse. Actually, it's warmer in here than it is outside. We got down to about 31 degrees Fahrenheit last night, so below freezing for the first time this season. And I think it's high time to get our Amaryllis started. So amaryllis are what we think of as a holiday flower, right? Beautiful big blooms in reds and whites, and they also come in lots of other colors, pinks and apricots, very tropical colors, because amaryllis are actually native to South Africa, to the southwestern part, the Western Cape of South Africa. They live in direct sun and they bloom in the summertime. So if you think about when the summer is in the southern hemisphere, it is winter here. So there are 4 places in the world that we source our amaryllis bulbs from. South Africa, of course, Peru, which is also in the southern hemisphere, and then Israel, and finally in Holland. So for the most part, what you're going to find in your nurseries and things, and if you buy them online from, say, Gardener Supply or another company like that, they're mostly going to be Dutch bulbs. The Dutch bulbs are bigger than the Southern Hemisphere bulbs, but these guys have to be forced. So if you get yourself a Southern Hemisphere bulb, something from South Africa or Peru, your bulb is going to be ready to bloom right when you get it, because it has gone through a winter down in the Southern Hemisphere, and now it thinks it's summer. But the stuff we get from the Northern Hemisphere, those we have to trick into thinking that it's summertime to bloom. So what we do is they're dormant right now. When you get them, they're dormant. If you see green growth starting to sprout from there, that means that they've broken dormancy, and that's a good thing. So what we need to do is give these guys a wake-up call. And we start that process by soaking the roots, just the roots. So you're going to put it in a pan of water, warm water. Remember, these guys want to think it's summertime, so everything has to be warm. Put them in a warm water overnight, 24 hours, to kind of wake up the roots. So I've done that on these that we have here. And then we're going to plant them, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So before we get to that, I want to show you the varieties that I have. Now, I got these, a couple of these at our local nursery, and the others I got through Gardener Supply. Like I said, the Dutch bulbs are going to be bigger. So the bigger the bulb you get, they're a little bit more expensive, but the bigger the bulb, the more stalks you'll get from the bulb, the more flowers. So in these big bulbs, you might get 3, 4, even 5 stalks of flowers, whereas in the smaller bulbs, you might only get 1. So that's something to consider. The biggest bulbs you can get are about 38 inches or 38 centimeters around, so it's about 15 inches around in circumference, and those you usually have to special order because they're not usually carried in the shops. But I'll show you the varieties that I got. This one is called Grandize Fantasy. This one, kind of spring-like, and the reason for that is because it's November, mid-November, these guys are not going to bloom for Christmas. Generally, when you wake them up, it's anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks before they will send up a shoot and start to bloom for you. So keeping that in mind, it's kind of nice to have pretty flowers in January and February where it's so cold and you want that, like, I don't know, something, right? So these guys I know are not going to be Christmas bloomers for me. I mean, it's possible, but it's very doubtful. So I'm keeping them in mind that I'm going to have this beautiful display in like January, February timeframe. Okay, so another one I got here is called Flamed Amadeus. It's kind of hard to see because I had to peel off the price tag. And then these other 3, I'm going to have to put labels on, photos on for you because they just have labels. This one is Picasso. I got these from Gardener Supply. I have Picasso, Charisma, and Grand Diva. And so all of these are ready to plant. I'm going to take the tag off of this one. I don't really care what the varieties are. I labeled them so that you could see them, but I'm not worried about labeling my vases with these because it doesn't matter to me. They're just going to be pretty flowers. You remove the labeling. You can plant Amaryllis in water. So you could do something like this. Now this hasn't been cleaned in a long time. I'm not even going to use it, but you can fill a jar with stones and plant the Amaryllis right in there, just like that. Fill with more stones around it, and then fill the water only up to where the roots are. You don't want to submerge the bulb because it'll rot. So you can totally do that. It's a very pretty display, and a vase like this will keep it from falling over, because you know those stalks get really tall and very heavy and they'll topple. So support is very crucial. So you can do that with water. However, if you plant your Amaryllis and you grow it in water, that bulb is done. It won't rebloom the next year. There's something about not having the soil around the roots and just having water that just makes the bulb not work anymore. So if you do that, just keep in mind that you cannot save that bulb over. Now, I have saved bulbs over a few times, and that's a whole other process that we can talk about at the end after we plant these. But I'll give you some ideas of vessels you can use. Amaryllis like to be pot bound. They don't want a huge vessel. They want to be snugged close together. I'll pop a picture here on the screen, but this is how they grow natively. They grow in clumps and clusters, so they want to be tightly packed together. They don't want lots of space and lots of soil. So keeping that in mind, I've got a couple of options here. You can go with something with a hole in the bottom like this, and you would fill it with soil. Even this is a little bit big. It's okay, but we would pack it really tightly around the bulb, and then we're going to put moss around that as well, so you're not looking at bare soil. So you can do a container that has a hole in the bottom. This one also has a hole in the bottom, but right now it's got a price tag covering it. So you can have a hole or not. These are not going to get a ton of water. We're going to water them once when we plant them, and then that's it until they send up their stalk. If you continue to water before they break dormancy, they will rot. So keep that in mind. Fight the temptation. Your temptation is going to be to keep watering it, and it'll be weeks will go by and you'll be like, it's not happening. I should water it. Don't water it. Just do it the very first time you plant, and that's it until it sends up a stalk. That's all you need. Once it sends up a stalk, it still doesn't need very much water. So your test will be if you can stick your finger in an inch down and the soil is dry, an inch down, then you can give it some water. If the soil is still cool or slightly damp, no water until it's dry. Again, you don't want these to rot. Okay, so you can also plant, and a lot of people do this, in containers that do not have a drainage hole. So I've got a really pretty vase here, no drainage hole in this, and we can plant it in soil, can always be washed out later. And again, the height on this is going to help keep that Amaryllis bulb upright when the stalk comes out. It'll provide extra support so that we don't lose our flowers. Now, if you do lose a flower, let's say you go away for a couple days and you come back and the flower has tipped over and it's laying on the table or wherever, don't fret. You can cut that flower off at the base, the stem, and put that in water, and it will last for days, sometimes up to 10 days. So they make great cut flowers, and more that the more you cut off, the more that bulb will continue to produce. So enjoy them, but don't fret if you have one tip over. Just put it in its own vase by itself as a cut flower, and then that will signal to the bulb to produce more stems. Okay, and then here is another vase I've got here. I kind of like this one because it's very holiday, right? It's silver, so it's going to be really pretty and bright. So I think though that the problem is the size. I don't know that I can fit 2 in here or 3. I generally like to do things in odds, not evens. It's something more pleasing to the eye, and I don't think I can fit 3 in here, which would mean that it would be too much soil. So this might have to be for a separate project. So this is the other container I have for Amaryllis, and I know it fits 3 because I've done it here before. This is very old. It's been sitting on a shelf for a couple of years. I didn't try to revive these after I grew them. So we're going to clean it out and set it up, and I know it can hold 3. So I think we're going to put 3 in here and probably 1 in here and 1 in here. Okay, so we're going to start with this container here. It does have a hole in the bottom. And it comes with a saucer, so I don't need to worry about, you know, water getting on my countertops or anything like that. I'm going to fill this up with soil. Now, it doesn't matter what the soil is. The bulbs have all the nutrition they need inside of them. So you don't have to add any, you know, any fertilizer or anything. The only requirement is that it is well draining soil. Again, these guys do not want to be wet. They don't want to sit in water. So you want to make sure that the soil is well draining. You could add extra grit like horticultural sand or more perlite, but this is just a bag of regular potting soil and this should be fine. So I'm going to take one of my Amaryllis. Actually, I think I'm going to go with this one. You can see it's got lots of roots here. And I'm going to spread these out a little bit because I do kind of want to get them in here. Now, Amaryllis don't want to be buried. So we're going to plant it so that it's kind of high. In fact, I want it a little bit higher than that. You only want the soil to come up to about here. That is, again, to avoid rotting. Okay, so then once we have that, we're going to just fill in around it and we're going to pack it well, because since this is not buried deeply, it needs support. And the soil itself is the support. I think I'm also going to add some branches to act as support when the flower finally comes up, the flower stalk, because then we can tie it to it. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you do not want to get water down inside of the bulb. So be very careful when you're watering. Only water the soil around it. You're not trying to water the bulb itself. Again, they like to rot. So if you're going to pour water down in here, it's probably going to rot on you. Okay, so that is how they like to be planted. Again, super tight in the vase here. It doesn't want a whole lot of space. I have a bag here of moss. I keep this over year after year, and I just use it for various projects. All right, so I'm going to pack the moss around it. This just means you don't have to look at bare soil, which makes it a little bit nicer. All right, now when it comes to watering, we're going to give this guy a good drink of warm water. Every time you water your Amaryllis, the one time before it, to wake it up, the one time you water it to wake it up, and then you don't water it again until the sprouts come up, but it always wants warm water. You don't want cold water on these guys. Again, remember, they bloom in the summertime. You want to mimic that environment. That's why they're going to be inside your house. So once you've got this guy potted up, we're going to give it some water to get that soil nice and wet, but not saturated. Then you're going to take it and put it in a place in your house that is very warm. It doesn't have to be in direct sun. It can, but it doesn't have to be, because at this point there's nothing photosynthesizing, right? We just want it to be very warm. We want that soil to stay warm. So if you have a south-facing window or you have it near a heating vent, however, if you're close to that, you have to make sure you check the soil moisture more often, because the heat will dry it out. But anywhere between like 65 and 80 degrees is great. That will wake it up, and then it will start to grow. So once it is starting to send up stalks, then it definitely needs direct sun. So again, a south-facing window or even a western-facing window where it can get afternoon sun. But you want it to get as much sun as possible while it's growing. And then when it starts to bloom, you can move that to anywhere you want. So if you want it on your dining room table, but there's no direct light there, that's okay. So this is the process for all of the bulbs that we're going to be planting of this Amaryllis today. I'm going to set this guy aside and we'll look at doing this in a triple. Okay, this container, quite large, it has a very large drainage hole in the bottom. So in order to keep it from losing soil, I'm going to put just a little slip here of frost cloth in the bottom. Kind of acts like a coffee filter. It will keep the soil from falling out, but water can still drain through. All right, and then we're just going to fill this guy up. Okay, so I'm going to press this down a little bit. We've got 3 bulbs that we're going to put in here. And, you know, oh, see, this is too low. So I'm going to add more soil. You really want these to sit up kind of almost at the edge of the pot, almost at the rim of the pot. Okay, I'm going to push this to the side a little bit. We've got this guy right here. Gonna nestle it in. And this guy, and yes, they are super close, but they like that. Now I did pre-soak these roots for about 24 hours in warm water. So they're very flexible and they are ready to start waking up. Come through here and just kind of pack it down just like we did before. In between. And like you're really seeding them strongly in here, so definitely packing it in. Remember, this is the support for these bulbs. We're going to provide a little extra, but the soil is really key. Okay, now I'm going to add some moss again. I did not hydrate this prior to using it, and that's okay. It'll get a little bit damp when we water it, but I didn't want a whole lot of water sitting up against the edges of these bulbs. Okay, so this container is almost done. We're going to do some supports in a minute, but I want to do the final container that does not have a drainage hole. Okay, so I've got this really pretty vase here, and it is a vase. There is no drainage hole in the bottom. So what's important, if you use a vessel that does not have a drainage hole, whether you're going to be using soil or water, is you need to add some charcoal. I just have a bag here. This is 100% organic charcoal. And what the charcoal does, as you know, if you have filters to filtering your water, it filters out bacteria and other stuff. Basically, keeps your water from smelling horrible. And then also, by extension, the soil, if you're going to be planting in soil without a drainage hole. So that's why that's there. It's on the bottom. Now we're just going to fill this guy up, not all the way. Unlike the others, I am not going to have this one sitting at the top like this. I'm going to have it down in it here so that when the stalk comes up, it has this vase for support. I'm going to go ahead and fill this guy about halfway. So if you look right here, you can see the beginnings of a leaf. So this guy is waking up. That's great. All right, so we're going to snuggle him down in here, and then I'm going to carefully add a little bit of soil around it. When I say carefully, it's because I don't want to get soil down inside the top of that bulb. And as the others, just pressing down. Okay. All right, that's seated pretty well. So we've got our 3 containers here. This one, it's holding 3 Amaryllis. This one holding 1, and then this one here holding 1. Now I'm not going to bother putting moss around this because nobody's going to see that. So I'm not quite done. You could stop right here if you wanted to, but I was watching Laura at Garden Answer the other day do her amaryllis, and I was reminded of putting really pretty supports on here. So you can take a stake like this, or any kind of garden stake, and support these plants. And I would recommend putting them in sooner rather than later, because once the stalks come up and the flowers are going, it's really hard to get a stake in there without damaging something. With triples like this, it's really easy to put a stake down the center, and then as they all come up, you can tie them all together to support each other. But we're going to use branches. So I've got a collection here of just what's in my yard right now. I just went out and clipped some places that needed it anyway. So I have two varieties here. I've got this is a Japanese maple. And the reason I chose what I chose is that you want flexible but not floppy stems, because you want to bend them into place if you want to create some of these designs. Now, I'm not going to leave these leaves on because it would be too big and get in the way. So we'll trim some of this up and might use these. The other option, which I also really like, is this. It's Cotoneaster, and super long stems with some just basic pretty green leaves. So I will probably use these because they are flexible and very hard to break, but they will provide support. I will strip the bottom of the stem and a little bit of the top as well if I'm going to do one of the arched supports, which I do want to do, I think, in this big one. As you know, it's going to be many, many weeks before they start to produce. And so this in and of itself has a bit of interest, winter interest for the inside the house. And when they start to send up their stalks, I can simply tie them to these stakes, and they can even kind of go up through the center here and have some support. So let's do something similar to the smaller one. Okay, so what do you think? I really like this one. This one will be cute too. I can always put something like a red or gold kind of ribbon up there as an attachment instead of just the twine. But I think that's going to be really cute. This one, I'm not too worried about providing support for. However, if it does seem to be leaning a little bit, then I'll just add in one of these. These are orchid stakes, and that should be enough. All right, let's get these guys in the house, water them with warm water, and let's find a good place to put them while they wake up.
Hi, baby. Hello, sweet girl. Hello, sweet girl. Yes, yes. Yeah.
Okay, I think these guys will be perfectly happy here until they start to bloom. And even then, I'm going to give them some direct sun for a while. When the flowers are really getting close, then I'll move them to wherever I want them. But they might look really nice just hanging out here with the other plants. Now, this guy is going to stay here for a short time and drain. I need to go get a saucer for it. And I apologize for the dirty pan. This is real life. So I'm going to get a saucer for it because I think it's going to live right here in the middle of the dining room table once I get a saucer, and it'll look really pretty leading up to when it blooms. After they bloom, what do? Well, you have a couple of options. You can just get rid of them if you want. You have to do that if you've planted in water, as a reminder. But if you want to save them over to next year and they're in soil, all you need to do is once the flowers are done and they start to fade, cut those stalks off, and at some point, if not already, green leaves will come out. These are beautiful, broad green leaves. Those are the powerhouses for the bulb for next year. So just like with any flowering bulb, those leaves are super important. So you want to leave them on and stick them in direct sun for the rest of the summer. So I usually put them outside and they sit out like any other patio plant, and they soak up all of that energy from the sun and they photosynthesize and they make all the sugars and food necessary for that bulb to produce the next year. And sometimes you'll even get a baby next to it, another bulb connected to the mother bulb. And I just leave those on because then there's sometimes multiple plants in the same container. So then you need to count back. So if you want Christmas blooms, count back about 12 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks from Christmas. And at that point, you're going to cut off all the leaves and you're going to put the bulb, still in the pot, but that's fine, put it somewhere cold and dark for 4 to 6 weeks. Then you can wake it up doing the same process we just did. And so basically what you're doing is you're simulating winter for these guys, making it cold and dark. So, a basement, a cold garage. Here we struggle with that because it gets so hot in the summertime that there's really no place cool other than indoors. So I will bring them indoors and just put them in our laundry room, which tends to be cooler than the rest of the house in the summertime. So that's what you do. And then you just go through the same process again, and you can have blooms year after year. Some people, and you can do this for sure, you can just plant them in your landscape when you're done with them this year. And that's great. However, just be aware that they won't bloom in the holidays. They'll bloom over the summer, but they're beautiful blooms, so you can enjoy them then too. And there are many varieties of Amaryllis that are very tropical looking, so you could always get some of those and have those as summer flowers. All right, that's going to be it for me today, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you learned something, and maybe if there's more stuff you know about Amaryllis that I didn't cover, please tell me, mention it in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thanks again for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful time in your garden, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.